Welcome to Real Day Nation, where on Real Day we have field days, and on Real Week we let the real speak. And today we're going to be talking about generational tension in leadership.
Generational tension in leadership. This is a very personal topic for me, coming from a church background and also a corporate background like my homeboy Dral B. And a lot of times, what I see when it comes to this is a clash between the teachers and the students. And what I mean by teachers and students is just people who are in leadership or have something that is desired and the one coming next or the group coming next. There seems to be a divide between those that have the torch, those that are waiting to have the torch passed, and it creates a lot of friction, especially among men, because I believe that it is something that is a very vital subject for us to get together in the future, and we have to get it right. We have to get right how to pass the torch, when to pass the torch, which the biggest thing about that is the win for me. I've talked to both sides. I'm a part of both sides, depending on the scenario you come up with. You know what I'm saying? But I think the biggest issue as it pertains to this is education on either side. What do the older generations know about the younger generations? What are the younger generations willing to share? What do the younger generations know about the older generations? So there's a constant cycle of things being taken advantage of and people being taken advantage of on either side. And so each side is trying to get their voice heard. Each side is trying to get their voice heard, and each side is trying to understand what their role is at the same time, should I say. From a senior side perspective on what I'm hearing, I'm going to just give y'all what I hear on either side. What I hear is that a whole lot of young folks are not ready, or young folks don't know what to do yet, or young folks just don't want to do it. I hear that more often than I hear, let me help them get ready. Let me see if I can dig in one level down and see what's going on. It may be happening where you live. It may be happening with different organizations. I know organizations out there that are doing a good job, but I'm talking about this subject because it's a real serious issue. So from the older side, people are saying that the younger side is not ready. And on the younger side, people are saying, hey, I may as well build my own table if you're going to gatekeep.
Oh, you want something too, old man? Huh? No.
I may as well build my own gate, and then I can just help people get through the gate I have versus doing what you say do all the time and holding me in place. So young people feel like they're being held in place. And they also feel like the cost of having a torch pass or of being taught what to do, the cost is too much. When I say it costs too much, I'm talking about things like you're seeing in trial right now.
Whoop, time to go.
With different people in the entertainment industry. I'll just say it like that without saying any names. You can look at the music industry and see that the cost of greatness is sometimes too much. I don't care what nobody say or whatever, but it's too much. You are wearing people out for stuff that most of you didn't even have to do. So you got people who get there wherever there is, and then they adjust the rules to make it a little more difficult for the next class to get in. And I think that's a problem. Gerald, what you think?
What I think is it's a generational value thing. So it's with that generational value. That's what I'm going to reach this from a personal and a working situation. So as far as the work area, I believe the generation of boomers and even Gen X, I believe they value hierarchy. They value tenure and face-to-face. That's what they value more than anything. And when you reach the younger generation, when we're talking about the millennials and even Gen Z, you see what the younger generation, they're more collaborative. They want to collaborate more. They want to tech forward, that tech moving forward solutions, and even a work-life balance. And that's the generation I fall in, because I don't have to be face-to-face with you or anything like that. I guess you can say mentor you or anything like that, or even work with you. I don't have to be face-to-face with you. And so with the older generation, valuing that hierarchy more than looking at the younger generation doing a collaborative. The hierarchy with the older generation is them standing their position long, standing in that hierarchy. And so a lot of the older generations are retiring later. So it's making the younger generations harder for them to move up. And so when you see the older generations in their position, they feel like I had to work this type of way to get in this position. So you're going to have to go through that same thing for me to even respect you, even though there are easier solutions to move up nowadays. So that's the situation that we're facing. And I don't know if you see that. And on a personal level, when the older generation complains,
why, Lord? Why, Lord? Why?
About the younger generation and neglect the fact that it's the older generation who is raising this younger generation or lack thereof. So if the older generation is going to complain that the younger generation is lazy, they don't do this, that, and X, Y, Z, who are we looking at it from? Because if I'm not mistaken, the people that you are complaining about is the people that you are raising. So I think it's a mentorship thing. I think a lot of the times the older generation is so focused on themselves, they forget that you have a whole younger generation that you're bringing up, and you have to get with those times. If it's tech savvy, if tech is moving up, learn that tech so you can also mentor that younger generation on how to use it properly. Because what you get is what we talked about in our last video. And if you're viewing this video, you haven't had the chance to look at our last video where we talked about AI. We talked about how the younger generation can use AI in a harmful manner if they're not learning from it, right? And so when you got the older generation who in most cases don't care about that AI thing, right? They value this whole face-to-face thing. You see it right now in the federal government when you got those who had to go back into the office. And if you're familiar with that, they had to go back into the office this year, right? And you had those people who it kind of messed up their work-life balance. The older generation, kids out the house, right? The kids out the house, they don't have to really worry too much about that. So they're fine with going back into that office space. They value this face-to-face. But when the younger generation feels like, oh, it's kind of messing up my work-life balance, we don't see each other. And so you kind of got this tension in that leadership with one side saying this and another side saying something different, and nobody's seeing each other's side. So what I'm angling this as is, if we're going to ease this tension with this generational leadership where the older generation want to feel like the best way to mentor or lead the younger generation is by having them go through the same thing you went through instead of looking for a different route, then that communication pretty much collapse because nobody's hearing each other. So that's what I see a lot of the tension is coming from. In fact, a study 2023 alone said that 63% of millennials believe that leadership potential is being overlooked due to age bias. Now, a lot of those times when you look at that, they call it ageism. When you look at that ageism thing, it's a lot of the older folks feel like, oh, they're treating me this way. They're trying to kick me out and make me retire because I'm too old. But you also got the younger generation feeling like, well, I can't get into these leadership positions, or they won't put me in these leadership positions or even mentor me to be put in these leadership positions because they feel I'm too young. The age bias. And this is 63%. This is a study by, and excuse me if I say the name wrong, it was Deloitte. I don't know if you heard of that, but I think it's Deloitte. That's just, a few things that when I looked it up and I was just trying to really learn more about this subject and see why there is tension amongst this whole leadership and being this mentor thing to where nobody's hearing each other. That's one of the things that I learned.
Well, that's the battle of wanting things done your way and wanting things done your way on either side. The leaders want things done their way, and the younger generation want things done their way. And no one is understanding that everyone is needed. We just have to puzzle piece where you are necessary.
You spoke on something too, and you spoke on it in the entertainment realm, and when it comes to entertainment and music, you see it as well. I'm trying to make it all relatable so everybody can understand this, but even in the music industry and entertainment industry, you get this tension between the generations, and when it comes to leadership, nobody tries to understand each other. And when it comes to that entertainment, you can see it in music. So you get a lot of the older generation saying that their music was better. The younger generation music is horrible. You get this every 10 years. Take a look at it this way. You get 80s, 90s, 2000s, the 2010s, now we're in the 20s, right? Look at every year. Every 10 years, you get a different version of music, whether it's R&B, hip hop, jazz, pop, whatever. You'll see how the music evolves with each generation, and the older generation talks about how the music is trash, right? You had the older generation who just was like, let's say, I'll give an example. Let's say this is like 2007, Soulja Boy, all of that, right? Everybody's doing a little,
lean with it, rock with it.
Yeah, lean with it, rock with it, right? People thought that's trash, right? The dumpster juice. Like, nobody need to be listening to that. And now the people that was the same people, that's us, you hear me, that was doing the snapping and pop, the lean with it, rock with it, right? Now you got the whole TikTok era. They coming to all these type of dances on TikTok, and some people in our generation are looking at that like we don't necessarily embrace. The older generation didn't necessarily accept our movement, so we just continue in that cycle, and that's what's wrong with this tension amongst these generations and why it's hard to lead, because we don't embrace the younger generation. Now I know there are always going to be subcultures, whether you're talking about in corporate or in entertainment, that's just toxic, right? That's a given, because everybody's human. Somebody's is not going to be right in the head. Yeah. But it should not be a case where this tension is so rich to where there is no more role models. Like J. Cole saying, no more role models, because nobody wants to bring up that younger generation and lead them, but also embrace what they bring. That's what happens. Because look, yes, lead them, but also embrace what they bring.
No, bro, really,
sure.
You got it, bro. Like, that's it. Lead them, but embrace what they bring. We're heavy on the lead part. You know what I'm saying? And we're real absent on the what they bring part. We're ready. I see it a lot on the military side. I see it a lot on the church side. I see it a lot in HR, just like you. In the federal government, lead, but also embrace what they bring. I could tell you from a biblical standpoint, it's the difference between King Saul and David. You know what I'm saying? King Saul wanted to hold on to the position. You know what I'm saying? He was God's anointed. You know what I'm saying? But he wanted to hold on to the position so much that he was willing to take David out. He was willing to sacrifice the future of a nation for a position. And why was that? There are arguably some different reasons why, but just from the story itself, if you go back and look at the story, a part of it is jealousy. And if you want to go just one level down from jealousy, what happens even now when people are jealous or leaders are jealous of the next torchbearers, the jealousy really comes from, or it stems from, not knowing or not having prepared for what is next for them. A lot of people in the older generations, they take their positions and they say, this is the hill I'm going to die on. Not this is the hill I'm going to innovate, or this is the hill that I'm going to support in transition. This is the hill I'm going to die on. This is what I'm going to be known for. That's it. Anybody else get in my way, I'm cutting them off.
Sure.
And then you get the manipulation of sponsorship and discipleship and fellowship, where you constantly take from this person, you give them just enough accolades, just enough attaboys where they stay in place. And then the goal becomes them staying in place. And so that's a problem among younger torchbearers. You know what I'm saying? I don't have to be you. And young guys don't have to be who their leader is. The older leaders have to learn how to facilitate growth without the responsibility of copying that person, without trying to manipulate that person into a 2025 image of themselves. They'll have elements of you. You can see elements of different people and different leaders, but they're not supposed to be you. They're supposed to be whoever God called them to be. And that may not be you. It may be that you're King David, but if you look at the stories in the Bible, King David was a whole different leader than King Saul. They had some similarities, but there were a lot of differences because of what God wanted to happen. And that's why the story is so significant. If y'all ever get a chance to get this book, it's a book called Tale of Three Kings. It talks about Saul, David, and Absalom. Even if you're not a Christian, it's still a good read. And it talks in detail more about what I'm talking about and the sacrifices that leaders have to make, because we understand from a leadership standpoint that the sacrifices you have to make. But that should be something you understand before you start thinking about leading and mentoring and getting younger generations ready for what they have to fight. Because they're not fighting the 1999 problem. They're not fighting the 1987 problem. They're not fighting the 1975 problem. They're fighting a 2025 issue. I like something that KRS once said, Dral. He said, if young people talk to more older people, they'll move faster and more efficient among their generation. But also, if older people talk to younger people, they'll move faster and more efficient among their generation. So it's really just a gap that we have to bridge, and we have to be more transparent about what it costs and understand that it may not necessarily be that people have to pay so much more for position or for exposure or for a torch to pass. Let's get out of that. If you are a trailblazer and you're watching this podcast, I want you to consider how you assess the cost to the next generation. If you walk to work because you didn't have a car, that doesn't mean that everybody you mentor has to walk to work and not have a car in order for them to be ready for the next level. If you busted open the door, you have a responsibility to make a more efficient test and trial for the next generation. They shouldn't have to face as many giants. That's what it's about. When you get in the door, you slay as much as you can and make it more efficient, not necessarily easy, but more efficient for the next generation. We're so concerned with making things easy that we leave other people behind, and then we expect them to stay behind. So when the younger generation start making money on TikTok and they start getting streams and they start understanding how to get that bag by themselves, we're mad with them. You can't be mad with them. You left them there. They were smart already. They're working together already. You see it all online. But if you left them there and they were left to their own devices and did something good with it, what you upset about?
And just to piggyback off what you were saying about the church and that culture, and even with the entertainment, it's a lot of gatekeeping, right? We mentioned that's a lot of gatekeeping, and it's we paid our dues, so you should pay your dues too. And I think that leads to, even in the church, it leads to a lot of youth disengagement, because now the older generation, with them not understanding viral trends and things like that, the youth start to disengage, and now you're not seeing a lot of the youth talk about the church and things like that because of that disengagement and that misunderstanding, or the headstrong thing not understand, because you feel like the old way is the best way, so right. A lot of things like that. You can even go back to the entertainment thing we talked about with comedians, because a lot of comedians, you can see, started with the old school comedians. They started doing it in like comedy clubs, right? So they feel like if you didn't start in a comedy club, you're not a comedian, because even the new comedians, I'll say, they can co-sign this, because a lot of the new comedians started out on social media. I'm talking Facebook, started out on that Vine, just those 15-second clips or whatever like that. Right. And they made those short clips so funny. They was like, I want to try this comedian thing. And if they elevated from Vine to trying to start out as a comedian, the older generation of comedians didn't want to mentor them because they felt like, no, you didn't get it out the mud like I got it out the mud. You ain't pay your dues. You got to start in the comedy clubs now. That's the only place real comedians go. So they're not embracing the new viral trend, and that's why a lot of them, if you're not a upscale like a Dave Chappelle and things like that, they're not as popular as they should be, because they don't want it. They feel like, I don't want to be on the internet and things like that. So they fall in the cracks. You know, them comedy shows getting a little smaller now because they don't want to embrace, like we said, embrace the new trends that's
And
out
them
there.
young folk don't care.
They
The
don't.
young folk do not care. Seniors out there, people that in the executive world or in the entertainment industry, wherever you are, I'm letting you know they do not care. The young folk, not only do they not care, they're creating their own bag, they're creating their own gates, they're creating their own way. They're creating their own form of paying dues. That doesn't involve you being creepy. That doesn't involve you doing wild stuff. That doesn't involve, it only involves what it takes for forward. That is the new wave. The new wave is do what it takes for forward and work together for forward. And it doesn't involve all that other stuff. Sometimes we in the way, man, and y'all got to chill on that. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And it's anytime you approach Drell, a senior, with something like that, or try to have expository conversation, not necessarily arguing, but just trying to come up with a point of understanding, they get real frustrated with that. And they want to blame it on younger generation doing something. And I'm like, look, they can only do so much. We were not parents back in the day. So what are you going to tell them? Because you were the parent back in the day, saying what goes on in this house stays in this house. And they got the courage to start working with other people and realize I don't have to just deal with what's in this house like that. They grew up to give you, as Drell said in one of our conversations offline, they grew up and gave you that grade.
What's the letter? What's the letter? What's the letter?
And you don't like that grade you got. And then they moved on. They found a homeboy or a homegirl. They struggled for a little bit. They got on that camera. They got funny online. And now we watching them in movies, and we watching them in commercials, and we watching them do all this stuff you said they weren't ready for. You might want to check your definition of ready, because they're not accepting your definition of ready. And to be honest, Drell, they shouldn't. Look at what they're doing, man. They shouldn't.
Yes. We can respect somebody's experience, but we can also understand and recognize that their methods are outdated. Okay, so we can respect your experience, of course. You went through a different route, you had to struggle a little bit more to get there. But there's a date on those things. Things become easier, some things become harder, but as technology increases, things become easier. So when you're out there and you're mentoring the younger, and even this one thing we haven't spoke about, upwards mentorship. That's when a younger generation is mentoring the older generation. So you got to be open to that as well, because we can all learn from each other. All right. A mentorship is not only the old mentoring the young. It's the young also mentoring the older generation. Yeah.
Well, wait,
so
dude,
that's
heavy. That's heavy. That's heavy. That's heavy, because when your manager is 21 and he said you got to be to work at 8, and you go do unk like that, you gotta be there at 8, bro. I don't know what is you saying? That's corporate. That's not me. Like I can't hook you up, bro. You gotta be there at 8 o'clock. Like what? I'm telling you, that's what they're going through, man. So that's heavy right there. Yeah, mentorship sometimes go the other way, man. A homeboy of mine is a former Navy SEAL, and he let me know that sometimes when they're doing operations, it doesn't matter your rank. It matters your skill set. It matters what you're good at. So if they have to do a mission to shut down a data warehouse somewhere in the world, and they have someone on their team that rank might be a little low, but they are a subject matter expert at databases, guess who's in charge of the operation? The person that knows about databases. You know, there's certain things they can't do just because of rank, but knowledge-wise, they'll be able to move better as a team because the person that knows most about it is at the helm. And that's how I think a lot of people should roll. If someone has more education on this and experience or experience, they should be at the helm. And it should not have anything to do with age, bro, because if it's a fire happening in the house, I think I've used this example before on a podcast, but if there's a fire in the house and a 7-year-old says the house is on fire, do you not listen to the 7-year-old because they 7? Or you at least go check for smoke? You should at least check. regardless of their age, man. So that's a big thing for me. That age thing,
Yeah, I think it's an ego thing. That I think a lot of egos are leading to this friction with this mentorship and this generational tension in leadership. I think it's an ego thing.
thank y'all so much for watching. We appreciate everything y'all do. Thank you for your support. Here at Real Day, we love to have field days, and on Real Week, we love to let the real speak, and the real has spoken.